Well, we are back here again. Another version of me that is a bit tired and not all there, so I'm probably going to flub some words a little bit. But it is that time again, and I cannot believe that we are already in December. It feels like we were just in November. It just felt like November started yesterday, and now we're in December. So it's Christmas time. I guess I should just get to it. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Some Okie Dude, and I'm back here today with another What I Read in November, the reading wrap-up, whatever you want to call it. And, today I am going to be discussing all the things that I read, watched, and consumed during the month of November. We are in December now, so it's going to be a bit of a weird month because I'm going to be going away to Florida next week as of the recording of this video. So I won't be putting out a couple of videos in the next week range. But I am here now, and I want to get some other videos out of the way before I get over to Florida. So, yeah. I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read during November, all the stuff that I watched during November. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. I had a very good one, spent a lot of time with family, and we had some good food, even though I'm not really a big fan of Thanksgiving food. But I did have a really nice steak, and prime rib as well. So it wasn't all bad. It was actually a pretty good Thanksgiving this year, and I got to hang out with a lot of family, and it was really nice. And I watched a good couple of things, and I read a couple of good books. So ah ah ah. Well, I don't want to yap for too long, so let's get into it. Okay, so the first book I read a couple of books for Veterans Day because Veterans Day is in November, and the first book I have for that is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. This is considered by many to be an American classic. A lot of people tend to read this in high school, and I am happy to say that The Things They Carried is a classic that lives up to the name. The Things They Carried was a phenomenal book. I really loved this book a lot. Definitely hopped up as one of my favorites of the year already, and that's really impressive considering that we are really steadily going towards the end. But this was a fantastic book, beautifully written, very emotional. I really like how Tim O'Brien plays with perception and attitudes about war, because this book isn't necessarily a pro or anti-war book. It merely is trying to depict war in the most honest way possible. As Tim O'Brien says, if you don't depict war in its most vulgar manner, then you don't care about the truth. And if you don't care about the truth, don't bother writing. Okay, that's kind of a very, very big paraphrase, but that's basically the sentiment that Tim O'Brien has in this book. It's really hard to describe this book. I mean, yes, it is a Vietnam War, but it's a book about the Vietnam War. It's kind of a short story collection, kind of a fix-up novel, kind of a Tim O'Brien bearing his soul out about his experience in Vietnam. And also, it's really just a mixture of the three. But this was a really good book, and it's definitely, it jumped up pretty instantly as one of my favorite books of the year. Very easy 5-star for me. Things They Carried was a really, really good book. And I'm really glad I waited till now to read this. I am kind of sad that I didn't read this till now. But at the same time, I am happy that I waited until now to embrace the greatness that is Things They Carried. Fantastic book. Don't regret reading this. The hype is warranted. So, yeah. Tim O'Brien, Things They Carried. The next book I read for Veterans Day, the other one I read, was The Yellow Birds by Kevin Powers. This is one I've wanted to read for a while, kind of like The Things They Carried. I kind of feel mixed about this book. It's beautifully written. I love the prose in this book. But ultimately, the book is the book is going for an emotional reaction that it doesn't quite feel earned in the way that this book wants to feel it's earned. Maybe it's just like a me thing, but I thought it was a solid book. It's really well written. I like the pacing. I really like how it goes back and forth through time. It is kind of a a things they carry just for Iraq and not Vietnam. But I don't think it's as good as the things they carried. It doesn't quite have that personal feel that the things they carried had that I really enjoyed about the things they carried. This book is far more of a conventional narrative, which is not bad. That's fine. Like conventional narratives are totally fine. I mean, they work, for a reason. But I feel this book was trying really hard to go for an emotional reaction, and it didn't quite do enough to earn that emotional reaction, at least in my humble opinion. But this was still a pretty solid book. I enjoyed it. I thought that Kevin Powers is a really good writer in terms of the, kind of line by line way. And the way that he captures grief is also pretty well done for the most part, and kind of that weird, those weird emotions you feel as you come back from a war. I mean, I've never experienced them, but compared to the things they carried, this feels kind of it doesn't quite go up to snuff, but it is a pretty good book on its own, and I liked it. So yeah, The Yellow Birds, solid book. Didn't like it as much. Didn't have as much of an impact on me as the things they carried did. But yeah, Yellow Birds. So I'll just put that down. The final book I have for November is one that I started a few months ago and I finally finished when I found some time, and that is Moon Witch Spider King by my main man, Marlon James. This is the second book of the Dark Star trilogy, followed by Black Leopard Red Wolf, which is, for my money, one of the best fantasy novels of our century. So how does Moon Witch Spider King hold up to that book? I will say it is very different from the first book. I really like that Marlon James didn't he didn't just do Black Leopard Red Wolf 2. He decided to go for a different view because we're doing a different character. And I really like how he changes his stylistic voice, because Sogalon the protagonist of this book, talks very differently than how Tracker talks in Black Leopard Red Wolf. It would have been really disjoint. It would have been really it really would have thrown me off if it had been written in the same voice. I mean, there is a lot of similarities with the voice in this, but they are very different. The lingo in this is far more experimental than it is in the first book. Because the first book, people generally speak, it's generally conventionally told. People speak more conventionally, though there is a lot of slang and patois and lingo from that part of the world. But this really embraces the African oral storytelling tradition that Black Leopard Red Wolf played with a lot, and just really pushes it as far as it can. It was also really interesting reading this book to see the differences between Sogalon and Tracker, but also just see how similar they are. I'll go into this more as I get into it when I do a proper review of Moon Witch Spider King, but is it as good as Black Leopard Red Wolf? I still prefer Black Leopard Red Wolf. I just had a far more intense experience with this book. But Moon Witch Spider King is a really good book on its own as well, and it's a really interesting look into it's a very different and interesting look into the same story, because the pitch of this series is that it's basically the same story, just told by 3 different people, and we get to see it from Sogalon's perspective this time instead of Tracker's, which is really interesting, and I really enjoy how he plays with your perception in this, much like how he did in Black Leopard Red Wolf, but also how he tests your perception of Tracker, because we do see Tracker in this. I will say you don't see him until later on in the book, which isn't really a spoiler, but so don't expect this to just be a full-on retelling of the book. It goes far more into the history of the world of this book, and it goes more into Sogalon's story and kind of and it also gives more context onto why the journey to find the boy is as important as it is, because of course in the first book we followed the perspective of a very small player, someone who just kind of gets caught up in this really massive story, while this account gives more context into what that bigger story is. And it's really fascinating. Again, it's not as I didn't love it as much as Black Leopard Red Wolf, but I still think that this book cements Marlon James as a deeply original trailblazer in the fantasy genre. And this book was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, Moonwitch Spider King, great stuff. Another really great fantasy novel from the mind of Marlon James. So yeah, there we go on that. Hello, kitty. How you doing? How you doing? So, moving on, we're going to do movies and shows that I watched during November, and I actually watched a good bit. I actually watched a good bit of stuff. I watched a couple movies. I watched a documentary. I started a TV show. So yeah, let's continue on. Let's see. First one we have here is We Live in Time, which is like a romantic film with Andrew Garfield and of course my the love of my life, Florence Pugh. She's just absolutely. Anyway, both are great in this movie. I really like Andrew Garfield in this film, and Florence Pugh. Of course, she's Florence Pugh. You know, that was. Anyway, okay. I'm gonna stop with the thirsting over Florence Pugh, but Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield are really good together, and it's also told in a really interesting way. It's a very non-linear structure, though it's a pretty conventional love story for the most part, but the chemistry between Garfield and Pugh is so strong where I didn't really mind it most of the time. So, yeah, it was a solid film. I didn't hate it. It was pretty good. Didn't really blow me away, but I thought it was pretty good. So, there you go. Next movie I watched was Anora, which was made by the guy who made The Florida Project, which I've heard is a really good movie. I haven't seen it because I'm really bad at keeping up with movies nowadays. But this movie was really interesting. I really like the bait and switch tone of the film. It kind of starts out as this kind of uncut gems kind of story about the sex worker, and then it turns into this kind of fairy tale romance. And then it turns into like a weird screwball comedy. And then it really takes a 180 into turning into this really tragic, sad movie. The ending, particularly, I thought was brilliant in this film. And again, I really like films that are bait and switches. I really like films that start out and you think it's going to be this one thing, and then by the second act, it just completely flips the script and turns into something else entirely. This might be one of the better films I've seen this year, and 2024 has been kind of a lackluster year for movies, I think. But Anora, I thought, was really good. And I really liked the performance of, not Micah Monroe, it's Mikey Madison, who plays the titular character. She's really good. She has a lot of bravado and toughness, but there's also this vulnerability that she shows in her performance, especially towards the end. And do be warned, don't watch this with your parents. Don't be like me, who took my dad to watch this film. Because there's a lot of sex in this film, and there's a lot of boobs in this film too. So, yeah. Jason's gonna have a field day when he watches this. But yeah, Anora was a pretty good movie though. Boobs and sex aside, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I like my fair share of that, but it's a really good movie. Alongside that, great performances from the cast, and it's kind of like a better version of Scarface, just with a exotic dancer and not Al Pacino acting like a Cuban gangster. Oh man. Oh god. Okay, but yeah. Anora though, really good. Might be the best film of 2024. I'm not sure yet, but I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a really good film, and really strong with what it was going for. Particularly the ending. I thought the ending was really good. So, yeah, Anora. It gets the Britain thumbs up, as Roger Ebert would do back in the day. The next thing I watched was a documentary by Alex Gibney called Wise Guy, David Chase, and The Sopranos. Now, if you guys don't know this already, I am a huge fan of The Sopranos. I really love that show. It's definitely in my top 10 favorite TV shows of all time. But I won't talk too much about that because, this is a documentary about the show. It isn't just the show. It's made by Alex Gibney or Gibney. I don't quite know, but he made one of my favorite documentaries of all time, which is Going Clear, which is about Scientology, which is a really fascinating, outrageous at times, and a film that will really piss you off because Scientology has hurt a lot of people, and the film Going Clear really explores the people who were hurt by Scientology. I've seen it multiple times. It's really, really good. Alex Gibney, I think, is a very talented documentary creator, and this film is no different. Or, well, it's not really. I guess it's technically a film, but it's two parts, and it has a lot of the cast members. Has Chris, Michael Imperioli, Edie Falco, who played Carmela, David Chase. It's partly a documentary about David Chase's life, David Chase, the guy who created The Sopranos, and it's also a exploration of how The Sopranos got made, why it was so well loved in its time, and why it's still such a great show. And we also really get a look inside the psyche of David Chase and also the psyche of James Gandolfini, the late great James Gandolfini, who played Tony Soprano, played him brilliantly. This documentary was really good. It was also really sad at points, particularly when it comes to David Chase's childhood, because unfortunately, David Chase's mom, Norma Chase, was the inspiration of Livia Soprano, who is the mom of Tony Soprano and is just a complete nutcase, who is just the worst mother imaginable that you could deal with. She's just ungrateful, horrible, you know, the all the 7 miles. She's just a terrible human being. And unfortunately, she was inspired by a real person. Her name was Norma Chase, who was David Chase's mom. And she would say a lot of the same things that Livia says in the show, and we really get a look into that. And we also get a look into, like, James Gandolfini's life and kind of how playing Tony Soprano took an effect on him. And kind of the idea that playing Tony Soprano might have contributed to his death, because, Tony Soprano really took James Gandolfini into some really dark places as an actor. And that can be really hard on people. It's really quite sad that James Gandolfini died when he did, because, man, he was a fantastic actor, and he was absolutely brilliant as Tony Soprano. It's quite sad that he's gone, and it's clear through this film, show, whatever you want to call it, this documentary, that the cast really miss him, and his loss was just a huge blow to everybody who knew him. And from all accounts, James Gandolfini was a really nice guy, not at all like Tony Soprano. And it's just really sad, because you can only imagine what else he could have done. Because, man, he was a brilliant actor, and he really just embodied the role of Tony Soprano, and he did it well. And it's really sad to see kind of that darker side of playing Tony Soprano, and that kind of darker side of fame, and also seeing kind of David Chase talk about kind of opening himself up a little bit, because he generally has this, like, inscrutable look to him. He just looks miserable in all the interviews I've seen of him. And once you watch this documentary, you get kind of an idea why. But yeah, Wise Guy was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of The Sopranos, check it out. It's really it's worth the watch. But it's also really sad, so keep that in mind. It is very sad at points, especially when it gets to David Chase and James Gandolfini. So, yeah. Last thing I watched was Get Millie Black, which is a new show, which is on HBO Max. You can guys watch that. There's a deal going on right now. You can get HBO Max for $2.99 for 6 months. That's what I did. And it is written by my boy, Marlon James. Um, I've only watched the first episode, so I won't say too much because there's only been one episode. Technically, 2 episodes now because it comes out every Monday. But yeah, I really like. Um, I'm liking it so far. There is some wonky dialogue here and there. There's some exposition that could have been done better, but it's only one episode, so I'm not really trying to critique it too much. But I really like how this show captures Marlon James's voice, particularly the intro sequence of Get Millie Black. The intro sequence of this show is brilliant. It tells you everything you need to know about who this character is. Really captures Marlon James's style in a brilliant manner. And it's also really well directed and well shot. I really like the shots, the cinematography of the show so far. It really captures. It's gritty, but it also captures the majesty of Jamaica. And what's also really neat is that they all speak in patois. So, and they do have subtitles. So, you know, if you're a guy like me who doesn't really get patois that much, um, that's very helpful. It tells you what they're saying, and you can mostly understand what they're saying, but there are some points where like, okay, yeah, these subtitles are very helpful. But yeah, Get Millie Black is starting out promisingly. I'm probably going to talk a little more about it once I do my wrap up for December, because there's going to be more episodes coming out. But yeah, it's pretty good. And Marlon James, again, he's a great writer. What do you want me to say? Though I am curious to see, though I am curious on why he decided to make this a TV show and not a novel. But well, he's probably working on Dark Star. But this is pretty good. So yeah, not really much else to say. And aside from that, I think that's all I have for today for what I read in November. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, I'm sorry if I seem kind of tired and not fully together. It's been a long day. It's been a long month. It's been a long year, really. It's a lot of highs and lows this year, in terms of 2024. So I hope I made sense for the most part. I generally try to make sense when I'm often worried that I'm alienating my audience, and, you know, I don't really want to be doing that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What did you guys read and watch during the month of November? Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. You can find my social media. I am on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews. They're probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm starting to use that a little more. And you can find me I think that's it in terms of social media. But like I said before, like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. As my buddy John Minton likes to say, it feels good when you press that like button. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, see you guys later. Bye bye.